The document you're about to see was never meant to leave a locked cabinet inside the Pentagon. It outlined a plan so extreme, so reckless, that even today it sounds like fiction. Hijacked planes, staged bombings, fake funerals, manufactured terror on American soil. The proposal came not from fringe operatives, but from the highest-ranking military leaders in the United States. They called it Operation Northwoods, a plan to justify war by attacking themselves. For decades, Northwoods was invisible. A ghost in the Pentagon's filing system. No press coverage, no debate. Just a stack of paper sealed in a box. In the late 1990s, the Assassination Records Review Board, created to release files related to President Kennedy, began combing through Cold War records. Buried in those boxes, they stumbled upon something they weren't looking for. Inside was a proposal dated March 13, 1962. Signed by the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Lyman Lemnitzer. It wasn't an intelligence report. It was a shopping list of pretexts for war. Each line described an incident that didn't exist yet, but could be created. Each incident would be blamed on Cuba, and together they would pressure the president to invade. The most disturbing part wasn't that someone thought of it, it was that the entire Joint Chiefs signed off. By 1962, Washington was obsessed with Cuba. The Bay of Pigs invasion had failed. Fidel Castro was still in power. And US intelligence believed Soviet influence was digging in. But the American public had no appetite for another invasion. The Joint Chiefs saw this as a problem, not of strategy, but of perception. Northwoods was their solution. The document proposed a series of well-coordinated incidents that would, quote, place the United States in the apparent position of suffering defensible grievances. In plain language, make it look like America was under attack. From manufactured terror to staged deaths, Northwoods was not a single operation. It was a menu. And every option came with the same outcome: blame Cuba, invade. One proposal called for a civilian aircraft to appear as if it were shot down by Cuban forces. The plan was simple and chilling. A real plane filled with passengers would quietly land at a secure base. A remote-controlled drone painted to look identical would take its place. The drone would broadcast a distress call, claiming it was under attack. Moments later, it would detonate over the ocean. Another suggestion: stage the deaths of American citizens. The document describes using, quote, a carefully chosen group of volunteers. Their deaths would be announced publicly. Funerals would be held. The world would see grieving relatives and a narrative of Cuban aggression. Northwoods also sketched out bombings in U.S. cities with real or simulated casualties blamed on pro-Castro agents. The point was never the target. The point was the footage. Blood, rubble, panic, broadcast on every television. One of the most explicit suggestions: blow up a U.S. Navy ship near Cuba, a Remember the Maine incident, referencing the 1898 explosion that helped trigger the Spanish-American War. Survivors would be produced to testify on camera that they saw Cuban forces attack them. The outrage would be immediate and global. The most disturbing line of all discussed, quote, sinking boats of Cuban refugees on the high seas. Not hypothetical ships. Real refugees. Men, women, and children fleeing Castro's regime. The idea was brutally simple. Destroy the boats, blame Cuban patrols, and use the deaths of innocent refugees as moral fuel for an invasion. And Northwoods wasn't the only proposal in this playbook. Under the same anti-Castro umbrella, another plan, codenamed Operation Dirty Trick, suggested using the American space program as a propaganda weapon. The memo stated, if astronaut John Glenn's Mercury flight failed, if his rocket exploded on launch, evidence would be manufactured to prove that Cuban electronic interference caused the disaster. In other words, if the worst happened during one of America's proudest moments, the blame could be placed on Havana. Even in death, an astronaut might be turned into a talking point for war. Dirty Trick and Northwoods were separate documents, but they grew from the same mindset. If reality doesn't justify war, create a reality that does. In March 1962, Operation Northwoods was formally presented to Secretary of Defense Robert McNamara. The Joint Chiefs expected it to move up the chain quickly. Instead, McNamara was appalled. The plan crossed every line, legal, moral, and political. He rejected it, and when President John F. Kennedy saw the broader set of pretext proposals, he shut them down completely. The Joint Chiefs' most ambitious deception operation never left the page. But the pages were real. For more than 30 years, Northwoods slept in a classified archive. No hearings, no media leaks, no accountability. The public had no idea how close its own military came to staging terrorist attacks under a false flag. That changed in 1997, when the Assassination Records Review Board declassified over 1,000 pages of Cuba-related material. Buried within them, the full Northwoods proposal. Historians and journalists pored over the documents. The verdict was unanimous. Authentic, signed, and very nearly acted upon. Operation Northwoods didn't sink refugee boats. It didn't blow up a drone over the ocean. John Glenn survived his Mercury flight. None of these proposed pretexts were ever executed. But the significance of Northwoods, and its sister concepts like Dirty Trick, is not in what happened. It's in what powerful people were willing to write down, sign, and propose behind closed doors. It proves that, at the highest levels, leaders were prepared to risk civilian lives, even turn national tragedies into scripted performances, if it meant achieving strategic goals. Northwoods forces us to ask a question that intelligence agencies rarely answer. If this was proposed and rejected, what proposals were approved that we still haven't seen? This was Operation Northwoods, the plan to wage war on reality itself. Because sometimes, the most dangerous weapons aren't bombs or bullets. They're stories. Stories written in rooms the public never enters.